To prepare for the difficult process of raising financing for such a large-scale production, Bernd Eichinger decided to first develop some visual material. He hired comic book artist Neil Adams to create some concept art that would help to flesh out a solid visualization of Bester's world. Adams submitted 25 drawings and claims his designs turned out to be quite similar to the cityscapes that later showed up in Luc Besson's The Fifth Element. Adams says in his interviews with author David Hughes that he even did some story consultation on the script. Bester originally wrote The Star's My Destination as a 4-part serial for a magazine, so the story, by nature, was episodic in structure, and this was proving difficult to adapt into a traditional 3-act screenplay. Adams apparently gave some advice to the development team that allowed them to work out some of the structural problems they were facing. Around 1996, the film appeared to have found its director, Paul W.S. Anderson, a young British talent who had just directed the first live-action adaptation of the Mortal Kombat video games. Anderson's film had been produced relatively cheaply and was critically panned, yet it turned out to be a visually impressive financial hit. Anderson may not be the most respected filmmaker these days, but he certainly wasn't lacking in passion. In a 1995 interview, he called the story a classic Shakespearean tale, and said he wanted his adaptation to be more focused on character than special effects. Working from a screenplay credited to David Giler and William Wisher, Anderson began storyboarding the film with a projected budget of $50 million. For reasons never explained, the movie did not advance beyond the early stages of pre-production. Anderson moved on to another sci-fi project, Event Horizon, and even after this film's release, he was still said to be attached to The Star's My Destination. Nothing happened with it, so Anderson next directed Soldier, a movie that was noted as bearing a general thematic resemblance to Bester's novel. Kurt Russell plays a brutal and impassive super soldier who starts to develop a capacity for empathy after being abandoned on an enemy planet and growing emotionally connected to its inhabitants. It was an expensive box office flop, and Anderson's connection to The Star's My Destination appears to have ended around the time of its making. A few years later, he wound up returning to Constantine Films to direct Resident Evil, another project that had spent years cycling through development at the company. While Anderson succeeded in finally bringing that movie to screens in 2002, The Star's My Destination never enjoyed the same breakthrough. Sometime in the 90s, Eichinger signed a distribution deal with 20th Century Fox, presumably securing some financial backing, and hired a new team of writers. Rudy Gaines and John Rice began working on a new draft that made some drastic and controversial changes to the story. Gaines and Rice removed the jaunting elements and added a love story meant to give the protagonist more motivation and sympathy. Foyle is driven to seek vengeance not because of his abandonment, but because the woman he loved died after he was marooned. Fans of the book do not tend to look back on this particular interpretation favorably. However, the script apparently met with strong approval at Constantine and 20th Century Fox. Gaines and Rice say they met with director Betty Thomas, an odd choice considering she was mostly known for making comedies, but Gaines's impression was she didn't actually have much interest. In spite of the support the production was receiving, another director was never found, and again, for reasons never fully explained, the movie stalled and slowly died. In 2006, Universal Pictures bought the rights to the story, and development started over in the new millennium. The project seems to have spent the next few years under the supervision of producer Lorenzo de Bonaventura, who would enjoy enormous success producing semi-sci-fi action franchises like Transformers and G.I. Joe. Based on those credits, it's hard not to infer that he planned to develop Stars as a similar kind of action spectacle. But in all fairness, de Bonaventura also has a reputation for supporting strong directorial talent. He was famously the executive who greenlit The Matrix at Warner Brothers. He fought against studio resistance to release David O. Russell's Three Kings, and he's worked on films as varied as Constantine, John Singleton's Four Brothers, Kim Ji-woon's The Last Stand, and Steven Soderbergh's Side Effects. Whatever direction he intended to take in adapting the book is unknown. We don't even really know how much progress was made during this time, because the production was kept fairly quiet and secretive. De Bonaventura was asked about it at least once in a 2007 interview, and pretty much all he said was that a script was being written and that it was proving difficult to adapt the story. He singled out the ending as an especially challenging problem to overcome. The script problems must have never been solved because there was never another update on the production. No directors seemed to have ever been attached, no actors, nothing. The next time The Stars My Destination was in the news, almost 10 years later, it was in an announcement that the rights to the book had been purchased by another studio. Paramount took control of the property, writer David DiGilio was hired to adapt the story, and Kong Skull Island director Jordan Vogt Roberts became the first filmmaker attached to the project in nearly 20 years. In 2017, Vogt Roberts talked about the film in an interview with Collider. He praised the book, spoke enthusiastically about adapting it, and mentioned that it might be made as either a feature film or a limited series. He also floated the name of South Korean auteur Park Chan-wook as another director potentially circling the project. And that's where the whole thing appears to have dried up. Since 2017, there have been no new updates on any potential film adaptation of The Stars My Destination. Presumably the rights are still with Paramount. If not, no other company or studio appears to have picked up the option. Is the project dead? For now, it looks like it is. But the book maintains a strong following, and I don't doubt that there's still some interest. As exciting as it would have been to see this story adapted as a feature film, the time for that seems to have passed. What seems more likely at this current moment is that the novel could be turned into a series. Several science fiction properties, like Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End and Isaac Asimov's Foundation, both of which famously spent decades in development, were finally brought to screens within the last few years by streaming and television companies. Results have been mixed, but these adaptations have helped to introduce some great stories to new generations of science fiction fans, and the format still has a lot of untapped potential. Who knows? With movies like Dune reviving theatrical interest in the genre, The Stars My Destination could find itself back in production at any given moment. If it doesn't happen within this current trend, maybe it'll have better luck with the next trend. The book will always be there. All it needs is the right talent to pull it all together.